May 2025 became the year's deadliest month for U.S. death rows as Florida, Texas, Indiana, and Tennessee carried out 5 executions in just 22 days, displaying how swiftly capital punishment can cluster when appeals run out. These men, Jeffrey Hutchinson, Glenn Rogers, Matthew Lee Johnson, Benjamin Richie, and Oscar Franklin Smith, faced death for crimes that ranged from wiping out an entire family with a shotgun to setting a beloved grandmother ablaze and ambushing a police officer on a dark Indianapolis street. Their last rituals were as jarring as their offenses: salmon and mahi platters, dorm room pizza and chocolate cake, Little Caesars slices, an overflowing Olive Garden feast, and stadium-style chili dogs, all swallowed before final words that veered from tearful apologies to a bizarre shout-out for President Trump. We'll walk you through each case: crime scenes, manhunts, decades of courtroom battles, and the charged hush of the execution chamber, so you can decide whether justice was served or merely repeated history. Jeffrey Hutchinson, Florida, executed May 1, 2025. A humid Crestview evening in 1998 erupted in thunderous shotgun blasts that snuffed out 4 futures in seconds: Renee Flaherty and her 3 sleeping children, Jeffrey, Amanda, and little Logan. Detectives followed a trail of pellets and heartbreak to Gulf War paratrooper Jeffrey Glenn Hutchinson, still wearing his stained BDUs when they cuffed him. At trial 3 years later, prosecutors replayed his tremulous 911 confession and paraded the Mossberg recovered from the duplex kitchen. Jurors needed less than 4 hours to return 4 guilty verdicts, prompting the judge to call the crime a slaughter of innocents, as he signed 3 death warrants. 2+ decades of litigation followed. Hutchinson's attorneys pointed to combat PTSD, bipolar disorder, and a traumatic brain injury. Yet every diagnosis collided with a mountain of evidence, and the Florida Supreme Court repeatedly deemed him competent to die. When Governor Ron DeSantis set May 1, 2025 as the date, frantic last-minute filings earned a 2-hour reprieve while the U.S. Supreme Court reviewed, then denied, his final stay request. At 6 p.m., the curtain finally parted. Witnesses saw a gaunt 62-year-old who had spent dawn reading Psalms with a prison chaplain and writing a final note of regret to Renee's sister. His last meal: salmon, mahi-mahi, asparagus, a butter-slick potato and iced tea, looked more country club buffet than death row cuisine, but Hutchinson ate only half. Minutes before the first drug flowed, he mouthed, "I'm sorry," toward the victim's gallery, yet declined an official statement. Midazolam dulled his gaze, vecuronium stilled his lungs, potassium chloride silenced his heart. He gasped 3 times, shuddered once, and was pronounced dead at 8:15 p.m., Florida's 4th execution of the year. Outside, Renee's brother told reporters, "Closure is a myth, but finality matters," while veterans' advocates quietly questioned whether war's invisible wounds had been weighed heavily enough. Glenn Edward Rogers, Florida, executed May 15, 2025. Glenn Rogers strutted into America's true crime folklore under neon bar lights, flirting with waitresses before turning motel rooms into morgues. Labeled the Casanova Killer, the Ohio drifter spun tales of 70 murders, though only 2 were proven: Tina Marie Cribbs, stabbed in a Tampa bathtub, and Sandra Gallagher torched inside her car near Los Angeles. A stolen Ford Festiva and a Kentucky police chase finally ended his interstate spree in November 1995. By 1999, 2 juries had imposed twin death sentences, unmoved by stories of childhood abuse and traumatic brain injuries. Rumors even tied him, briefly, to the O.J. Simpson case, multiplying his macabre mystique on cable specials. The legal clock ticked for 26 years. Appeals citing ineffective counsel, fingerprint contamination, and lethal injection secrecy collapsed. Governor DeSantis signed the death warrant on April 15th. Rogers spent his last month drawing portraits for fellow inmates and receiving gospel hymns from a prison pastor. His May 15th dawn began with a pepperoni slice breakfast. He saved pizza, chocolate cake, and cola for the official last meal, joking that it beat vending machine fare from his drifter days. Just before 6 p.m., the chamber curtains swept open. Cribbs's mother gripped her daughter's hands while Rogers scanned the room, eyes settling on a lone spiritual advisor. "I know there are questions you need answers to," he began, promising closure in the near future. Then came the line that ricocheted across headlines. "President Trump, keep making America great." The sedative took hold mid-sentence. 16 minutes later, he was the nation's 16th execution of 2025. Reporters noticed his ever-present grin fade only after death was declared. Outside, Hillsborough detectives called him evil's salesman, while defense volunteers prayed the prison's clanging steel doors had finally sealed an era of performative serial killer celebrity. For victims' families, the moment offered more relief than triumph. Proof that decades-long grief can end, even if the wounds never quite close. As you absorb these first two stories, pause and feel the uneasy hush that lingers in every witness room. The law calls these events executions, but for families on both sides, they are collisions of memory, grief, and retribution. Each injection needle glints beneath fluorescent lights that never flicker. Each final breath feels both irrevocable and strangely small compared with the sprawling decades of appeals that preceded. Before we move on, remember that justice here is measured in minutes, yet its echo can fill a lifetime. Hold that thought as we step into the next, equally haunting cases awaiting. Matthew Lee Johnson, Texas, executed May 20th, 2025. Matthew Lee Johnson's life spiraled into infamy on the 20th of May 2012, when he walked into Nancy Harris's family-run Garland convenience store, armed with little more than a half-baked plan and a bottle of lighter fluid. Surveillance video showed the 49-year-old setting the 76-year-old grandmother ablaze after she surrendered the register. A scene so shocking that one detective later called it evil without a mask. Johnson fled, but neighbors drawn by Harris's screams noted his license plate. Police caught him within hours, still reeking of gasoline. In custody, he confessed, blaming crack cocaine, poverty, and a childhood steeped in violence for a crime that would haunt North Texas. At trial, the jury heard how Harris, a church deacon, lived long enough to identify her attacker before Burns claimed her life 5 days later. Johnson's lawyers presented evidence of brain trauma and addiction, but the jury needed just 90 minutes to recommend death. For 13 years, he pursued appeals, arguing intellectual disability, introducing childhood medical records, even claiming that lethal injection drugs were untested, yet every court, up to the U.S. Supreme Court, ruled the verdict sound. Shortly before 6 p.m. on May 20th, 2025, Johnson was led into Huntsville's polished steel chamber, the same one that has ended more lives than any other in America. His last meal, a cheeseburger, crinkle-cut fries, and a chocolate shake, looked like a boyhood diner order, perhaps a fleeting taste of innocence. As the drugs flowed, he turned toward Harris's family. "I can still see her on that day. Please forgive me." His voice cracked. Then, at 6:53 p.m., it fell silent, leaving a community to weigh mercy against memory. Benjamin Donnie Richie, Indiana, executed May 20th, 2025. Just after midnight on the same night Texas ended Johnson's life, Indiana carried out only its second execution in 15 years, extinguishing the life of Benjamin Donnie Richie at Michigan City State Prison. Richie had been 20 when Officer William "Bill" Toney chased him down a Beech Grove alley on the 29th of September 2000 after a stolen truck report. A single round from Richie's .40 caliber pistol pierced the 37-year-old officer's neck. The father of 3 bled out before backup arrived. The killer was arrested hours later, hiding in an abandoned house, the murder weapon still warm. During his 2002 trial, prosecutors painted Richie as a remorseless career criminal who wanted one less cop on his tail, while defense experts testified to fetal alcohol brain damage and a childhood of beatings and solvents. The jury chose death. For 2 decades, Richie filed appeals, questioning mental competence, lethal injection drugs, even seeking clemency because Indiana had executed only one other man since 2010. But each petition collapsed. On the 19th of May, 2025, the governor rejected a final clemency plea. Richie's last meal, Olive Garden's tour of Italy, platter, salad, and strawberry cheesecake, was a feast of comfort food, perhaps recalling dinners he never had. At 12:37 a.m., the lethal injection began. 9 minutes later, he was pronounced dead. In halting final words, he said, "I love my family. I hope Officer Toney's family finds peace." Outside the prison, a circle of police cruisers flashed blue and red halos, while Toney's widow whispered, "Closure is a myth, but tonight the chase is finally over." Oscar Franklin Smith, Tennessee, executed May 22, 2025. Oscar Franklin Smith, at 75, walked the yellow death house corridor in Nashville as the oldest person Tennessee has ever executed, and the first since the state's 2020 drug cocktail scandal paused all killings. In 1989, Smith's estranged wife Judith and her teenage sons, Jason and Chad Burnett, were found shot and stabbed in their duplex. Detectives lifted a bloody palm print missing 2 fingers, the same digits Smith had lost in a sawmill accident. Prosecutors said he coveted a life insurance payout and had talked of having them wiped clean. Smith insisted he was framed, offering alibis and later pointing to newly discovered DNA on a murder weapon that wasn't his. His appeals produced a rare 11-hour reprieve in 2022 when faulty drugs forced the governor to halt the injection moments before it began. A statewide audit followed, tightening execution protocols and delaying Smith's fate 3 more years. On May 22, 2025, after the U.S. Supreme Court declined to intervene, Smith chose to face death without sedatives so he could speak clearly. His last meal, 2 hot dogs loaded with relish, tater tots, and apple pie a la mode, echoed county fair memories from his rural childhood. In a 9-minute statement, he lashed out at a justice system that rewards who tells the first lie, then looked toward Judith's sister. "I didn't kill her, and God knows it." At 10:47 a.m., the first drug coursed through. A chaplain held Smith's shoulder, reciting Psalm 23 as his breathing slowed. Outside, abolitionists rang a bell 73 times, once for each year of his life, while counter-protesters read the victims' names, insisting that, finally, the palms at the crime scene may rest. These 5 stories, intertwined by calendar yet separated by decades of pain, close the ledger of U.S. executions for May 2025. Leaving viewers to confront the uneasy space between justice served and wounds that never quite heal.